So here what we're looking at is I have some shoulder pain with benching. So I just wanted to see if I could do something to modify my pain so I could still bench that day. My pain is in the top of the shoulder right there. I think it's a bursitis, to be honest, but does it really matter? No, let's just see what dysfunction I have and what I could do to address it. So it doesn't hurt with shoulder press, but it hurts with pressing forward. So we're going to take a look at, and I already know this about myself, what could it be causing my pain? Here's where we would look at some internal rotation. So I have a ton of external rotation. I have very little internal rotation. That's just from throwing a lot of years throwing baseball. Internal rotation, you should have about 60 degrees roughly. You need that for bench pressing. Your shoulder goes into extension and external and internal rotation with bench pressing. So you can see my arm on the left is all the way down. You can't see it, it's behind my body. My right doesn't go down too far. So I need to work on some of those external rotators that aren't allowing me to go into internal rotation. You can see the bench press motion there. My arm needs to go into internal rotation to get the bar down to my chest, and it doesn't want to go. So it's not bad there, but if you start adding load on that with a barbell, it's going to be painful. So I'm just going to do a little bit of work in the external rotators, posterior, the back part of the shoulder there. So the first thing I'm going to do is see if I can't loosen those up a little bit, do a little bit of self-massage. So I'm going to take the lacrosse ball to the back of the shoulder. So again, this is for shoulder pain, right on the top of the shoulder while I'm trying to bench or do any shoulder activity pretty much. So rolling the posterior cuff, lacrosse ball in there. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on here. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes just trying to do something to reduce my pain and get that back of the shoulder to loosen up a little bit. That might let me go then into internal rotation a little bit easier when I do my bench press. So the big thing with this is I'm laying on the ball, the back of the shoulder, trying to make it active. So I'm moving my arm into internal rotation to stretch a little bit, back into external, just keeping it just kind of an active type activity as opposed to just laying on the ball and keeping it in one spot the whole time. So I'm just rolling through this as I would. This is real time, so I'm spending maybe a minute or so on the back of that shoulder there, just to give you an idea how long I would actually take for this. It's not the most comfortable. Definitely like getting a deep tissue massage. So there I flip over and get a little bit more in the back. Bring my arm across the body. So stretching your shoulder or your arm across the body has been shown to improve internal rotation. So here I'm working on some of those muscles in the back of the shoulder and then bringing my arm across my chest. So I'm kind of combining an active stretch with the lacrosse ball for a self-release, self-mobilization, however you would want to look at it. So this total process with the ball, I may spend maybe 2 minutes on max, just hitting all that area, the different tissues. This principle applies to any location, so don't really spend more than about 2 minutes on anything with the lacrosse ball in one spot. And then here I'm just going into a little bit of a stretch across my chest, just because it felt good and it felt like I was stretching that out a little bit. So I'm holding that maybe 30 seconds. And then this will kind of lead into my next movements. So first, try to find something to reduce the pain using the lacrosse ball, a little bit of a stretch. Next then, I'm going to go into a little bit of strengthening for the posterior cuff. What's the point of this? Get the muscle warmed up a little bit and ideally functioning properly, so it helps reduce that pain in the top of my shoulder if your rotator cuff is stabilizing through the bench press. So next you're going to see here, we're going to go to bands, and now I'm just going to be strengthening the back of my rotator cuff. So just using a band. Resistance doesn't matter a ton. You're not looking for something heavy. You're more just looking to get the muscle activated a little bit. So I'm doing some external rotation with the shoulder there, some punches out. How many? Doesn't really matter. Maybe 6, 8, 10. Again, nothing super heavy. I'm bringing my arm out, squeezing the shoulder blades together, and then I'm letting it slowly return back in across my chest a little bit to get a stretch there actually too. So I might spend about a minute or so working on something like this, a little bit of isolated strengthening. And then I'll change my arm angle up a little bit and go to more of like a thrower's position in half kneeling. Same thing, bringing it back a little bit more quickly and then letting it return a little bit more slowly. So doing a few of those. So I was able to bench this day. My shoulder was a little bit less painful. And then I also wanted to touch on, if you want to bench and your shoulder hurts a little bit and you want to modify it, obviously you shouldn't always bench if it hurts or do anything for that matter. But if you still want to complete your activity, this is one quick tip on the bench. When you have your, which I'm going to go into here in a second, when you have your thumb wrapped around the bar and you have a wider grip, it requires more internal rotation. So here I'm just going to give you a quick example. That is what you have to have, that rotation. So the wider your grip, and if your thumbs are wrapped around the bar, you need that internal rotation. You can see where the shoulder goes down, or the hand goes down relative to the shoulder. If you decrease your grip width so you narrow up, it doesn't require as much internal rotation, so you won't get as much pinching in the top of the shoulder. So narrowing up the grip is one. And then if you actually do a false grip, so you bring your thumbs up and over, you can tuck your elbows more easily, and it almost brings it into more external rotation than it does internal. So there are two little modifications you can do and you can play around with temporarily if you need to do that for a session or two of lifting in order to allow you to lift with less pain. So just something that I did for myself that day because my shoulder hurt. Maybe some tips that might be helpful if you're trying to bench press or any kind of pressing motion.